Hi everyone, how are you doing? The lighting is a bit wacky today because it's very grey and rainy outside, so I'm having to use the light in my room as well as the light from the window. Usually I just like to have natural light, but this combination is making me look a bit grey, and yeah, it's supposed to stay this way for a few days' time. We're supposed to have more rain. I think we've been really lucky the past few weeks. It's been very sunny, lots of blue skies, and I think that's helped cheer people up during this time of having to stay at home. So, but anyway, this is what we have for now. I actually don't mind grey and rainy weather all that much. It's one of the reasons why I like London, because usually it's quite often a lot more like this. Anyway, I want to talk about a number of new books that I have because I found that I am able to read a bit more recently, and I've got back more into the swing of reading quite regularly. I was having a bit of a dip for a while just because I was anxious about everything, but now I'm finding I'm really missing going to bookstores and just having a good browse of new books. So I thought this would slightly simulate, the experience of going to a bookstore and looking at some new books, because these are all supposed to be new books that are out this month, I believe, because I mean, some might change because publication schedules are changing because bookstores are shut and all of that. But yeah, so I just want to try to simulate that experience, and it's sort of like what Barbara Streisand does, who it was just her birthday a few days ago. So happy birthday, Barbara Streisand! But in the basement of her mansion, she has a whole shopping mall that she's set up down there of all things that are filled with things that she already owns, but she set them up like shops because she can't just go browse in shops in a shopping mall like a normal person. She's set up this whole thing in her basement so she can browse as if she were shopping. I mean, it's insane. But anyway, so I thought it would be really fun, wouldn't it, in your home to use all of your books on your shelves and pretend that you're in a bookstore just having a browse. And anyway, so I'm gonna start talking about all these books. The first is the new novel by Emily St. John Mandel called The Glass Hotel, which I know a lot of people have been looking forward to. Some people have read already. It's got fairly positive reviews. I mean, Station 11 was such a big, massive hit. So many people read it. And I think this is quite different in some ways, but similar in another. I mean, it's set in the real world. I think it's set in the year 2008. And mainly, like, it involves a number of different characters, but mainly centers around a Ponzi scheme and about the financial crash at that time, and the crash of this scheme. And so people who are in a hotel in Vancouver, but then also in New York City in the business district. And so yeah, it's got fairly positive reviews so far. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this soon, hopefully. The Intoxicating Mr. Lavelle by Neil Blackmore, which has a really beautiful cover. So this is set in the 18th century and is about two young men who want to go on a European tour and learn about culture and society, and so they embark in this tour, but it's very different from what they expected. And they meet a man named Mr. Lavelle who is very cultured, but who also I think is a bit suspicious in his character and their involvement in them. I think one of the men's involvement with them. I think it has this like gay storyline, but I think it does at least. Don't hold me to that. But yeah, I love a good historical novel. Getting wrapped up in a good historical novel, and this sounds like a lot of fun and really good. Rainbow Milk by Paul Mendez. This is a proof copy in this beautiful purple, but this is a card with what the actual the cover of the novel looks like, and isn't that beautiful? It's so gorgeous. So this is a novel about a young man named Jesse McCarthy, who's I think a teenager or like in his late teens, and he's the son of parents who are part of the Windrush generation in England. So this was in the 50s and 60s. I think a number of quite a lot of people moved over from the Caribbean to to England to live and work here because there was a labor shortage here. So a number of people moved here, and obviously that was great for the workforce and the economy but yeah, created some tensions between racial tensions in the country because there was a lot of people from the Caribbean who weren't here before, and so his parents were Jehovah's Witnesses. He was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and he wants to find himself. So he moves to London to explore his race and sexuality, but he also becomes a young prostitute, and so yeah, it's all about his process of doing that, and I'm so excited to read this very soon, hopefully. The Dominant Animal by Kathryn Scanlan. This is another really beautiful cover on this, and these are short stories, very, very short stories. I guess you could call it like flash fiction almost, because I think a lot of the stories are only a page long or 2 pages long, and they obviously about a whole range of subjects, but quite often the stories are about how the ordinary turns into or morphs into the uncanny. And yeah, so I'm really keen to try this because I think it's such a talent to be able to write in such a compressed way to make a story so impactful that's just over a page or two. I mean, yeah, that takes a lot of skill. So yeah, I'm keen to try some of these. Next, I have a couple new books by Irish writers, and you know I love new Irish writing and trying to pronounce Irish names, which is something I find slightly challenging sometimes. So the first is a novel called We Are Not in the World by Conor O'Callaghan. Conor O'Callaghan. Sorry, it's entirely terrible. I really shouldn't do accents. I can't do any accents. I've lived in England over 20 years and I still can't do a proper English accent. So yeah, this is a novel about a father and a daughter who go on basically a road trip together from England to France. And the father is in a situation where he's very heartbroken after the end of a love affair. And the daughter, who I think is like in her late teens or early 20s, and has been going slightly off the rails. And so it's sort of a voyage journey for them to connect with each other, learn about each other, I've been wanting to read this author before. I think this is his second novel. His debut novel was really acclaimed. Was meant to be a very creepy, good novel, but yeah, hadn't got to it yet. So hoping to read this soon. And then there's a really interesting new book called A Ghost in the Throat by. Now I'm gonna get this wrong. I'm so sorry. So Jackie or somebody out there who can speak Irish can correct me or knows how to Irish accents. Doireann ní Ghriofa. Sorry. Okay. So anyway, the title is A Ghost in the Throat. It's a really interesting mixture of I think sort of essay and auto memoir. I was going to say auto fiction, but I don't think there's any fiction in it. So basically, it's about the story of in the 1700s in Ireland, there was an Irish noblewoman whose husband was murdered, and she famously wrote this poem while drinking some of his blood, I think, and so yeah, it's a very intense, very famous poem, but it's also about the author's experience, modern day experience, sort of connecting this woman from a few centuries ago, and while she's doing this, she actually translates the poem herself. So at the back of the book, there's a transcript of the poem, both in Irish and in the English translation. So this is an author that writes both in Irish and in English. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think she's mainly a poet, and so this is really interesting. Yeah, sort of new kind of cross-genre form of book. So very, very keen to read this. And also because this is the proof edition, this is the what the real cover looks like, which is really beautiful as well. Saving Lucia by Anna Vaught. This is about 4 different women, I think, in the early 20th century who were all committed or spent time in a mental asylum, and who have been sort of relegated to sort of a sort of footnote in history. But this novel is meant to give them a voice and try to see things from their point of view, including one of the women is James Joyce's daughter. And really interestingly, this is being published by Blue Moose Books, who this year they have committed to only publishing books written by women. What's Left of Me Is Yours by Stephanie Scott. So this has a really interesting premise. So it's about in Japan, the Wakaraseseya. Sorry, it's a difficult to pronounce a word, but yeah, basically it was a sort of agency that hired people especially to try to seduce couples that individuals that were in a relationship to gather evidence about them to sort of have be used in divorce proceedings to the advantage of the other party in that relationship. I think this occurred in the early 2000s in Japan. This was a real thing that happened and was a big scandal when this sort of agency was uncovered and these people who were doing this. So it's about one specific instance of this, of a man who's hired to seduce a woman to gather evidence like this, but then he ends up actually falling for her, and they start a relationship with each other. But obviously there's this big secret about why their relationship started in the first place. So it explores that whole complicated story. But yeah, it sounds really good. The Anointed by Michael Arditti. This is a novel about King David. So in the Bible, King David was famous for slaying Goliath and founding Jerusalem and saving Israel. But this novel is told from the perspective of three different women that he was involved with and that King David was close to, and tells it from their point of view, and shows how he did all these heroic things, but that also he was a ferocious despot, and yeah, that whole other side to his personality. So yeah, I think that's an interesting premise. Another book with a really beautiful cover. The Octopus by Tess Little. This sounds like a really fun story. So it's set in Los Angeles and at a 50th birthday party for a famous film director, and it's a very small party of just several people, all people involved in Hollywood. And the next morning after this party, the famous film director is found strangled, and so I think it's sort of a murder mystery about what happened to him, but also this film director had a pet octopus called Persephone, and I just love that there's a pet octopus as part of this story. So yeah, this sounds really fun. And then finally, I have a few novels which aren't new, but what I got because I'm eager to join in with the Women's Prize. You know, it's a special anniversary for the Women's Prize, and so they've organized this thing of trying to get people to read past winners of the prize that they haven't read before. And these are three past winners of the Women's Prize that I've not read, but I'd quite like to. And so yeah, I'm hoping, and because we have more time over this period, since I've read now 4 out of the 6 books that are shortlisted for the Women's Prize, and the winner isn't due to be announced now until September, there's extra time to read more past winners. And so yeah, I'm hoping to read some more of these, hopefully along with Anna, and then we can get together and discuss some of the past winners, you know, as well as this current year of the book prize. So hopefully we can do that. So yeah, these are ones that I'd be really keen to get to, including Small Island by Andrea Levy, who is an author that died, I think, a couple years ago. And you know how I was talking with Rainbow Milk about how it's about this sort of Windrush generation. This follows that. So I think it's in the late 40s or the early 50s. This is set and involves some people who have moved over from the Caribbean, but then also other people who have recently returned from World War II, and about the after effects of that. So yeah, a number of people in the community in England involving that. So yeah, I've been very keen to read that. Then Carol Shields, who's an author I've meant to read a lot more of. I've read, I think, only a couple of her books. I've read her book Unless, which was so brilliant. So this is Larry's Party, which is about a man who, in the gardens of Hampton Court, there's a famous maze at Hampton Court, you know, that's set up with the tall, what's it called? Bushes, topiary, to form a maze. It's really beautiful. I've gone to it before, and there he meets the love of his life, and so it's about the story of that. And then there is Home by Marilynne Robinson. So this is really interesting. So there's this famous trilogy that Marilynne Robinson wrote, and this is the second book in that trilogy. And strangely, I've read Gilead, the first book, which I was a bit nonplussed by, and I've read the third book, Lila, which I absolutely loved. I thought it was so brilliant and beautiful, and but I've not read Home, so I'd be really keen to read this. I mean, actually, I'd really like to go back and read all three of the books because there's a fourth book in the same series, and that's being published later this year, hopefully. And I'd like to reread all those because I think I need to give Gilead another shot. But this is meant to be really great. It's about a prodigal son that returns home to his father. I think after being 20 years away or something, and he's an alcoholic, and so about the familial strife in that relationship, and so I'm very eager to read this and more of Marilynne Robinson and reread her because she's so brilliant. She's so good, isn't she? So those are all the books I want to talk about. Let me know if you've got any of these or if you've read them, what you think about them, which you think I should read first, which you are interested in reading first, and if any that you're eager to get after this, and also if you're going to be reading any of the past Women's Prize winners as well, it'll be really interesting to catch up on some of these and have some more chats about past winners, and then try to figure out what's maybe been the best Women's Prize winner overall from the past 25 years. So that would be fun. So hope you're doing well. Hope the weather is better where you are, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye, everyone.